Good night and welcome to the Galen Hour. We're here tonight for a third episode of this season, and as you may know, for this season we're collaborating with the Ministry of Economic Development and we're focusing on Belize's medium-term development strategy. Tonight's topic that we'll be focusing on is how education, health, and community development contribute to poverty reduction. If you tuned in last week, we talked about the state of our nation with respect to poverty. So it is a pleasure to be here with you tonight. We have some heavy-hitting guests with us tonight. CEO Mejia is in studios, and we'll get an opportunity to introduce her shortly. CEO, welcome. But I want to welcome our co-host, Ms. Gabrielle Hulse. She's joining us virtually tonight. It was good to have her with us in studio last week. Gabrielle, welcome.
Hi, Miss D, and good night, everybody. I'm sorry I can't be in studio this time, but I promise, I promise I'll be there soon.
All right, yeah, we know you keep your promises, so we look forward to seeing you in studios maybe next week or shortly thereafter. All right, so I want to officially welcome you, Mrs. Diane Mejia, CEO in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology. CEO Mejia, welcome to the Galen Hour.
We look to be here.
Yes, it absolutely is good to have you, and we look forward to all of the good information you'll be sharing with us. We also have joining us tonight virtually CEO Valentino Schall. Mr. Schall is the CEO in the Ministry of Rural Transformation, Community Development, Labor, and Local Government. Welcome, CEO Schall.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's really a pleasure to have you as well, CEO. So good. We were supposed to be joined as well by CEO Dr. Julio Sabido from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, but he just sent his regrets. He had an emergency and won't be able to join us. So tonight we will talk to CEO Mejia and CEO Valentino Schall. Right, so welcome. We will take a quick short break and we'll be right back with the Galen Hour.
The Galen Hour is back. Tune in to a brand new episode every Wednesday at 8 p.m. live on Love TV, Love's Facebook page, Galen University's Facebook page, and the Ministry of Economic Development's Facebook page. This season is in collaboration with the Ministry of Economic Development. Don't miss out on informative conversations centered around the medium-term development strategy.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. So we have our CEOs in studio tonight, and we are talking about how education, health, and community development contribute to poverty reduction. We don't have the CEO of health with us tonight, but so we can certainly focus more on education and community development, right? So I would like to start with CEO Mejia, since she was kind enough to be here early. She's sitting in studio along with me, so I'm not lonely. CEO, it's a pleasure indeed to have you here with us. And tonight we really want to look at how your ministries work together, at least as a first question. So we know, well, not necessarily the first question, but that's part of what we want to talk about. But in our first segment, we want to look at how the ministries contribute to the poverty reduction. And so if we could just start by asking you how you envision your ministry contributing to poverty reduction.
Sure, no problem. You know, the way out of poverty, as many of our leaders have said, is really through education. And we recognize, and anyone who's part of the education community also knows that education isn't something that you'll see an immediate result on. It's a long-term it's a long trek that you're in for when you start school. But really, learning is how we improve ourselves. It's how we get a job and how we get better jobs, how we move up in the world. Our ministry is absolutely focused on doing what it can to improve the education system. Our Belize Education Sector Plan, which is for 2021 to 2025, focuses on 4 key areas. But ultimately, all of those areas as we work on them, they will contribute to poverty reduction. That's one of the things that we see. We look at reforming the system of education. We look at transforming teaching and learning. We look at prioritizing underserved sectors, and we look at maximizing the workforce. So obviously, the area of maximizing the workforce is the one that's most immediately targeted, but they're all connected. What we've been doing in an effort to make this plan reality, achieve the goals step by step, is we have different programs that we work on. And I think the most maybe relevant or pressing one that I can share with you right now is one you've probably heard about, and that is the Education Upliftment Project. It's Together We Rise. This is the program that started in the last school year. So we're running right now for the second year. Last year we piloted the Education Upliftment Program with 4 schools, 4 government schools in the south side of Belize City. We call them the GEM schools. Gwen Liz, Excelsior, Maud Williams, and Sadie Vernon Technical High School. And the ultimate goal of the EUP project is what we call it too. The ultimate goal of everything EUP related is to remove the barriers to access for education. What we've seen over the years is that one of the most common reasons for a student not completing high school is financial. They don't have the money to pay the fees. And it really doesn't matter how high the fees are. If you're not able to afford education, you're not able to afford education. So the first premise of the EUP project is to pay the school fees for the students who are enrolled. So every student who is enrolled in one of the Education Upliftment School has his or her tuition paid for in its entirety by the government. And this is tuition and fees. So the schools know that they can't come back and say, oh, I forgot a badge fee or a PE uniform or a t-shirt fee or anything like that. The understanding going into this is that the fee that they get, that money covers everything.
Wonderful.
In addition to the tuition, the students who need, and many of them do, they get a healthy meal every day as part of the National Healthy Start Feeding Program. They also get uniforms. And then the school also gets support with infrastructure. So it's comprehensive. It's really wraparound. Of course, there are also social services that are part of this. There's that element as well. We started this program last year. This year, we expanded the program to include 5 high schools that are in the south of the country. So we now have 9 schools, 9 secondary schools across the country that are part of the Education Upliftment Project. When we were doing the planning, we anticipated that we would have, we thought, 2,600 students. We are at over 3,100 students. We're over 500 students more than we anticipated with year 2 of the program. These are 3,147 students, to be exact, who are benefiting from a high school education that many of them may have started but not finished. You know, and so I really think that program is it's definitely one of our flagship programs right now. And if you're talking about reducing poverty and you think of education as the way out of poverty, you have to think about the Education Upliftment Program.
Absolutely. This is really good to hear. It is a pilot project?
So it was a pilot last year. Now we went 4 last year, we added 5 now, so we're at 9. And we're planning to see how we can expand.
Wonderful. I mean, this absolutely, we always hear people saying, educate yourselves. When we go and recruit for Galen, we say to our students, we were actually at Maud Williams yesterday. It was actually a wonderful experience. So kudos to Principal Domingo, right? At Maud Williams. So we're saying to students that if you want to uplift yourself, education is the way. So it is good to hear the ministry is chipping in a huge way, in a very comprehensive way to ensure that they can realize this.
Sure.
Thank you. You'll get more time to talk about your
No
programs. CEO. I'd like to bring in CEO Shal, who's virtual CEO. You can do the same for us. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you envision your ministry contributing to poverty reduction?
Thank you very much, Diana. It's really a pleasure to join you all tonight. So my ministry has multiple focus because of the various departments within the ministry. We have rural transformation, we have local government, and we also have labor. And so within those departments, we are focused on poverty reduction. The first goal of the medium-term development strategy is poverty reductions, and so that is a priority for the government, and so we made it a priority for our ministry. In the rural development department, we play a coordinating role, and by that I mean that we look at the rural space, and based on the studies that we have done and the government has done, we are able to say where the needs are of the people. And if you look at poverty, poverty is highest in rural areas compared to urban areas. There is urban poverty as well, but the rate of poverty is twice in rural areas as that in urban areas. So how do we deal with that? Well, the ministry itself cannot take that alone. It needs investments from multiple sectors, and that is why we collaborate and we coordinate the interventions together with other ministries. So just to give you a quick example, one way to address poverty is to ensure that the children in rural areas have access to education. And that is where we work together with the Ministry of Education to address that. Also, the needs of rural areas involve a lot of roads and streets and that sort of thing, especially for agriculture investments, for farmers. And so for that, we collaborate with the Ministry of Infrastructure, and similarly with the Ministry of Health, because health is important for the well-being of rural residents, but also to address the issue of poverty. And so we play a very important coordinating role. And then, of course, we have direct responsibility for rural water, which is very important to address the issue of poverty. Having access to good, clean, potable water is a first step in ensuring that you address poverty, ensuring the health of the people. But in addition to that, we work on addressing poverty at the Labor Department. Of course, employment is extremely important. Unfortunately, given the hard work that the government has been doing and all the ministries, we have been able to reduce the unemployment rate to an all-time low of, I think, 2.8% at the moment. So we work through the Labor Department to ensure and to encourage people to be ready to participate in the work in the job market, in the labor market. And so we have a lot of programs for job preparedness that we are carrying out. And of course, the big one that we did on the 1st of January this year is to raise the minimum wage by 52% to $5. And that immediately improved the income of at least 40,000 Belizeans. This is a lot of people who were before January 1st of this year were earning 52% less. So this put a bit more money in a lot of people's pockets in order to help them improve their quality of life. They'll be able to buy a bit more services. Unfortunately, the global inflation came at the same time and has affected the purchasing power of the people. But nonetheless, we feel that the increase in minimum wage has helped to improve the lives of a lot of Belizeans. So I will leave it there for now, but that's some of the ways that we're working to address the issue of poverty in the country.
Yeah, Thank you, CEO Shell, for that introduction. Good information. You know, in our introductory episode, we talked and encourage our viewing audience to tune in. The information that's coming out of this particular season is vital for all of us. It's information that really is hits from no matter what level you're at in our nation. The information that we're sharing here is so important because it relates to all of us in one way or another. When you're talking education, when you're talking health, when you're talking rural development, you know, so it's all important. But I want to bring in Gabrielle. Gabrielle, yes, there you are.
I know it's a little difficult.
Yes.
To see each other. We got so used to it already from last week.
Yes, yes.
No, I know CEO Shal touched on it a little bit as well, and so I guess I just wanted to hear from CEO Mahia, because I know, I mean, from coming from the government, I know that we always have to be in touch with all kind of ministries and all kind of stakeholders, and so I guess it's just for the viewers to know how we do with that coordination. A lot of the interventions require a lot of coordination and collaboration. So I just want to speak a little bit on the different coordinating mechanisms that the government has, or maybe specifically the Ministry of Education has, to do with all the stakeholders that they must come in contact with your interventions.
Wow, coordinating mechanism, those are big words. You know, I'm not sure that I really have ever thought of our working together as, you know, being part of a coordinating mechanism. But we do, you're right, Gabrielle, we have to talk to each other a lot. One of the things that's really important is that things connect, you know, and like I was listening to CEO Shal just now, and he's not telling lies. He's absolutely right. And we have to make sure that we stay in touch with each other. And so there's so many different ways. Some of it is just honest to goodness conversation. It's just sharing information. It's we're lucky that almost every week we meet as CEOs on the day after cabinet, and so we get to share information about things that we're doing. But beyond the conversations, I think there's also a very important kind of common sense sharing that has to happen. You know, with you're starting something. I'll give you one example. You know, we partner also with other groups. UNICEF is a wonderful partner for us, and not just for the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology, for other ministries as well. And UNICEF has one of their projects is a WASH project, a water and sanitation hygiene project. And we spoke about the WASH project 2 years ago, and realized in our conversation that we kind of need to go beyond teaching children to wash their hands. We've been through COVID. We know this. But what we realize is that also connecting to another ministry, that NEMO uses schools as hurricane shelters, right?
Yes.
Storm shelters. And many of these schools need support. They need help. The schools don't have appropriate bathroom facilities, right? And so one of the things that we agreed to do was we worked with NEMO, we worked with the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing, because MIDH helps to do the surveys of the schools, right? So they did a check of all the schools that are on the shelter list to say, these are the ones that need help with bathrooms. The bathrooms, for whatever reason, are not up to standard. In some cases, they don't have running water, or there's a multitude of reasons, right? But it absolutely is collaboration. So we're working, we're in, for the most part, in rural areas, working with MIDH, working with NEMO, who is, of course, under the Ministry of Sustainable Development and right? But it all comes together because it's not traditionally an education thing, but under education with the WASH project, we've been working to build / renovate / improve bathrooms for schools that are hurricane shelters in different districts. and it's a coordination that came out of looking at the realities that we're dealing with and just honestly thinking, okay, so how are we going to do this? You know, there are other things, and some things seem more obvious. You know, our ministry is starting a campaign. It's the More campaign. I'm very excited about it, but I know if we have time to talk about the campaign right now. But one of the elements of that campaign is coordination. So we are going to be recognizing schools for being more digital, more healthy, more connected, more creative and innovative. And these things, more involved, they're going to connect to things that are running already. So if you want to be more healthy, some of the things that you can do are things that are initiatives that are being encouraged by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Right? Yeah. So we're building on the good things that other ministries are doing. We don't want to say, oh, you know, this is just about what this ministry is doing. Our ministries are working so hard in all their relevant areas. Where we can share that information and connect does take some effort, but it's I think all for the ultimate benefit of our people.
Well, wonderful. I mean, it's really hard for us to think that any ministry could operate as in a silos, right?
Yes.
So, and the more we talk and the more you share, we realize there's lots of overlapping that happens. We're all the ministries are catering to the same group of people,
right,
or Belizeans, you know.
And we don't want to operate in isolation, because when you work in silos is when your projects are not sustainable. So we recognize this and we try to work together.
Yeah. And I'm really pleased that you brought in the involvement of UNICEF, because the government does not do what it does alone, right? So we do have to have our partners. So thank you. So I want to invite you, CEO Shal, if you have anything you want to add in terms of not the mechanism, but how you communicate and complement on complementary initiatives between your ministries.
I think I'll give you an example. There are about 23 villages in the country, in rural areas, of course, that do not have electricity. And to address that, we have a Ministry of Public Utilities, and they have an energy department. And so we have a standing meeting that we have regularly with that ministry at the ministerial level. So we get together, my minister, Minister Ikena, and Minister Shabat, CEO Urbina, my colleague over there, and their head of department and my head of department, and we meet very regularly to discuss the issue of villages that need to be electrified. And so, you know, they are the ones implementing the projects, but we work together on ensuring that they are moving along, and where we need to help them, we do. And so, you know, we have been able to complete the first 3 villages. We have, I think, 3 other villages we're working on using renewable energy. And so we meet regularly. We are due another meeting very shortly. And that is one way we ensure. So we are responsible for rural communities. They are responsible for energy. We need to electrify these villages. So it's obvious that you need to talk. And that's what we do. And so, you know, at the highest level of the ministries, we get together very regularly to discuss these things. No? And so you have to have a connection, a very healthy and strong connection between your partners and your colleagues. You have to understand that you cannot operate alone. You know, you can benefit from the strength and the expertise of your colleagues and the ministries and departments they have within those ministries, and that's what we do. And similarly, we work with UNICEF. We support the WASH program as well. We address those issues with schools and with health centers, and we're actually about to sign a new program with UNICEF to do that. And so the conversation has to be constant. And you have to work together, and you have to be willing to work together. And so far, I'm very happy to say that this is the same attitude that is shared among the colleagues that I work with in various areas.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think when we think coordination mechanism, we think that it has to be this very formal, institutionalized version of a mechanism. But I think the government does a good job of, having those conversations that are necessary and having those communication channels there and available for when we need it. And so I think that's a big part of the coordination and how the coordination gets done. I think that's existent, not only through, and I'm glad CEO Mahia mentioned it, the CEO caucus, because some people don't know that weekly the CEOs are meeting, and they're also certain sectors that they delve into and they talk about and they have conversations about, and that's just one type of communication channel that exists. And I think Vic talked about it in the first episode. We also have the MTS Secretariat, where we talk to the ministries involved, specifically with the strategic objectives, and we try to have those meetings and we try to create those channels. So I think even though we don't have something big and institutionalized, but we do have those channels available, which I think is just as important. So I'm really glad that the two CEOs brought those up.
Yes, indeed. And poverty, as we share more and more, is everybody's business.
Right.
And if you can, when we come back, because we are up for a break, so we'll take a short break. But when we come back, if you could share with us maybe some of the other private sector or civil society agencies that the ministries work with in getting the work done. So we can hear and some more of the initiatives that you're actually doing. I know you've talked about quite a few, or mentioned quite a few, CEO, but there's more detail, much more you can share. And same for you, CEO Charles. So when we'll take a short break now, we'll come back and we'll pick up with this conversation. Stay tuned to the Galen Hour.
Galen University's Institute of Hospitality and Tourism is excited to announce that registration is now open for a Serve Safe certification course. This highly respected program sets the industry standard in food safety. Upon completion, you'll receive an official certificate from Galen University. Join us on November 9th and 10th, 2023 from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Galen University's Central Farm campus. For more information, contact 608-3066. Secure your spot today.
Hello, my name is Jarrell Velasquez, and on behalf of Galen University, I would like to extend an invitation for men to come back to school. Young, old, near, far, wherever you are, I feel like getting an education in this day and age is imperative, as it sets you apart and puts you in a position to create a lot of opportunities for yourself down the road. So I'm a firm believer of having an education, as it allows you to scale whatever it is that you have going on, and having the requisite knowledge in order to move strategically is something that will prove to be very beneficial. So the statistics are glaring when it comes to men in these classrooms. I myself, I'm a Galen graduate. I was here from 2012 to 2016, and I was able to get a bachelor's in marketing, and created a career post-graduation based on the studies that I was doing at Galen, and the things that I was able to learn, I was able to implement in real life scenarios, grow, and now I'm able to be in a position to where I can come back and invite you guys to get an education. So I'm here, if I can give back and touch one person and encourage one person to come back to school, then I feel like I've done my part. So I'm here doing exactly that, and hopefully, we'll see. So let's get you guys back in the classrooms, let's get butts in seats, and continue to educate ourselves as a people.
Become a member of the Galen Eagle Alumni Association. Reconnect with your fellow classmates. Rediscover the Galen Eagle spirit and reawaken your inner eagle. Come home, come celebrate. 20 years of excellence with Galen University. For more information, contact 636-8881.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. We're talking tonight with CEO Mejia from the Ministry of Education and CEO Charles from the Ministry of Rural Development. And as CEO Mejia would have said that a little bit, because there's a lot behind. It's not, they're responsible for several portfolios under their ministries, but it's easier to just say. But let me just So CEO Mejia is Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology, and CEO Shal is the Ministry of Rural Transformation, Community Development, Labor and Local Government. So welcome back to the Galen Hour, and we want to pick up the conversation where we left off before the break.
So I know, so sorry.
Go ahead, Gabrielle, yes. Mm-hmm.
No, I just wanted to go off of what you were saying, that we were picking up where we left off last. And I know that we were talking about some of the programs and initiatives that each of the ministries have going on right now or plan to have. And last week we were talking with Ms. Diana from SIB. She was telling us a little bit about the MPI, the Multidimensional Poverty Index, how that's a new measure of data measuring poverty in Belize right now, and also just other data generation that they've been doing. And so I'm just curious and interested in the perspective of your ministries. Where does data fall into when you're developing policy or projects or those kind of initiatives? How do you use that data, and what kind of data do you use to inform those initiatives or those policy decisions? I guess we can start with CEO Shal and then CEO Mejia.
Let me unmute myself here. Yes, no, that is very important. In order for you to have an effective intervention, you must target your intervention, and that is what data and information gives to us. And I think the MPI that was done recently gives us a very good, quick picture of the situation of poverty in the country and what makes up poverty under that index, and that includes access to education and health, as we're talking about tonight. And when you look at it, it gives you a quick overview of the situation and the reality that people face. And again, that's one of the reasons why I said, there's a higher rate of poverty in rural areas compared to urban areas, and that's true in the MPI. And so immediately that tells us, as ministries, as government, as international partners, as civil society organizations, that there has to be a lot of focus placed on rural areas. And of course, in every meeting, in every conference, in every session that I go, I always remind people that, rural areas is extremely important. It's important in almost every element. If you look at, for instance, I'm not going to steal CEO Mejia's thunder, but if you look at the rate of trained teachers in urban areas compared to rural areas, where do you think you have the lower rate of trained teachers? If you look at classroom size or teacher to student ratio, where do you see that? And so, this is very important, because then it allows us to, like I said, target our interventions. Again, when you look at the labor force participation, the unemployment rate, you look at what's the participation or the unemployment rate in urban versus rural areas. And then, that helps you to decide, how you're going to target your interventions. And so data is extremely important, and the MPI especially. Unfortunately, Toledo keeps coming up as the most disadvantaged district in the sort of the mainstream poverty studies that have been done in the past, and of course with the adjusted MPI, it appears there again. So it needs a lot of support, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why the expansions of the program of the Ministry of Education to support students attending school was expanded to Toledo, because that's where the need is. And then you have Cayo, and then interestingly Orange Walk that shows up in the MPI as one of the neediest of all the districts. And then you can break that down a little bit more into urban versus rural. No? So it helps us quite a bit. I mean, data is extremely important. Data coming from national statistical system, but also within the ministry. I'm sure CEO Mejia can attest to this, is that we generate our own data from our own activities as well. And one of the things that we have been doing at the Labor Department is to digitize the services. And through this digitization process, we are now able to generate quite a bit of data that is very precise. So, for instance, this evening, we are currently having a webinar series on to inform people and make them aware of their rights. And one of the topics, the first topic that was presented on today was severance pay, because from the data we have generated, this is the most critical issue that keeps coming up between workers and their employers. And so that's the first topic that we address. And that is data informed. And so we have digitized the labor complaint management system. And so now every case that is presented to the Labor Department is logged in an application software. We know the date and time of the complaint, for instance. We know where it was made. We know what sector is affected. We know what the issue is, what the topic is, and then we can identify what is the most common complaint, which district you get the most common complaint. We can even tell you what time of day you get the most complaints, because the system is now completely digitized, and we're moving to continue to the digitization process, because it helps us to improve the effectiveness of our services that we provide.
Thank you for sharing that, Theoshal. I mean, some of those initiatives, I'm glad that we're having this platform, this conversation here, because I don't think a lot of people know that this is happening, and that the things that maybe they're not sure about and they'd want to know more about, there's opportunities for them to learn about through these kinds of things. So thank you for sharing that. CEO Mahia, if you want to share on how data informs education policies and programs.
Sure, thank you. So, Shal, we're not going to start talking and compare where we're getting our data from tonight. But I absolutely agree with what my colleague has said. We need data. At the Ministry of Education, we have a few different sources. Our main source of data for our schools is the Belize Education Management Information System, which we call BEMIS. And BEMIS tracks data on students, on teachers, on schools, from preschool through to secondary. It does not yet track tertiary. Notice I said yet. Yet. But with the BEMIS data, what we are able to log attendance. We're able to, that's how we track enrollment. There are new features that we're adding. What we've seen is that BEMIS is largely underutilized. So one of our first targets 2 years ago, 2+ years ago, was to try to make sure that we would better utilize BEMIS to collect data. And we learned that one of the challenges is that the principals, the teachers who have to input data would say, well, I don't remember. And so there was a lot of like reteaching every year. So, I mean, we created tutorials that made a huge difference. This year, it's almost historical with BEMIS data, because for the first time, by the end of September, we had entered all secondary and verified data for student attendance in secondary, and now we're working toward primary. Some years that it's like the end of the year and that data is just being verified. So we have internal ways of collecting data, and then we use it for different things. So I am able to tell you with reasonable confidence about the enrollment of the students in the education upliftment schools because of the data that we've collected. And then there's other things, right, that we've recognized as we go through. We've been blessed with the donation of 5,000 laptops from the Republic of China, Taiwan. And so we're blessed with the donation, but we're challenged with how do we determine where these devices should go? What do we do? Well, we look at data. We know that we rolled out the Connect Ed program, which was through the Connect Ed program, we connected over 200 schools to internet. So they have internet functioning throughout their schools. So we know which schools have internet. Some schools are not connected using the Connect Ed program. They had their own data, their own internet programs, which is fine, but we know who they are. So we have data on which schools have good internet. We know which schools then can utilize the computers, the Chromebooks that have been given to them. So we went back to the went back to the numbers and we looked, we said, okay, if we used 15% as our magic figure and we allotted 15% of the population of the secondary schools to get Chromebooks and 15% of the population of standard 4, 5, and 6 in relevant schools, schools that had access to internet, because the expectation is that those would then be areas where the students would also have internet access at home, right? So we've used the data to help to drive the decision making for the distribution of the Chromebooks. On a simple programmatic level, we know that literacy and numeracy rates are not what they should be. We ran for the second year this summer, Let's Catch Up Summer Camp. And the decisions for the summer camp were based on data. We looked at, what are the areas that teachers have said are weak and how do we do this? We recognize the weakness in literacy. We know that the Rotary Club there's a program called Literacy Alive, which we've seen because of the data has worked to good effect in some schools in Toledo. And so we've determined that we would take the Literacy Alive program, and we are running that program in every government school in the country at the standard 2 level. Because the data tells us that if you're not reading properly by standard 1, chances are there's something wrong. We have to check. You should, by standard 1, you should be a fluent reader. So we are running this program in standard 2 because given the COVID delays and the realities, we thought, okay, we're not gonna stress about standard 1. Let's look at standard 2. How can we help the students in standard 2? And the government, the Ministry of Education, is not the general manager for every primary school in this country, but we are the general managers for government schools. And so our government schools across this country are running this program as it should be run, where the data is collected. So our expectation is that by the end of this academic period in which Literacy Alive is going to be run, that we will be able to use the data to see improvements in literacy levels for those students in standard 2. So on different levels, we recognize the absolute import of collecting data and then using it to drive the decisions that we make.
Yeah, definitely. Listening to you, I would want to believe that the situation in Belize is changing with respect to data and the gathering of data. There was always, in the past, a criticism of it's hard to do analysis the way we'd want to because the data wasn't there. But we can see that there's an initiative at the Statistical Institute level and everywhere else where possible, and with the digitizing of our ministries, where the data that we will need should become more readily available and, as you just described, CEO, so very useful to all of us. CEO Shal, I don't know if you want to chip in here at this point and share in any particular other initiatives that your ministry might be using data to assist and to drive initiatives or policies, whichever works best. You're muted?
Yes, I'm back. Yes, thank you. No, the point about having good information to make decisions is extremely important. And for us at the ministry, because of the coordinating role that the Ministry of Rural Transformation does, having good quality data from the national level and then disaggregated downwards to the district level is extremely important, because in that way we can monitor the changes, whether it's improving or not. Just to give you a quick example, one important national survey that we keep a very close eye on, and we collaborate with the SIB, is the labor force survey. We want to know where unemployment is decreasing, increasing, on what sectors are improving, and of course, we use that then to make decisions. And one of the things that we're looking at currently at the moment is the very low unemployment rate. This is a good problem, and the reason I say that is because now employers are competing to get workers, and if that increases the wage for workers, anything that is in short supply, the price increases. This is basic economics. The problem is that it increases price overall, and if you have a limited supply, then at some point it becomes a problem. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking now at the labor force participation. We're looking at the potential pool of workers out there who could join the labor force. And that information is available because of the work that is done by the Statistical Institute of Belize. And now we're looking at that information to see, all right, we have a pool of people who aren't working, who could be working. Why aren't they working? And let's see how we can help them to join the labor force. And that's another initiative that we're looking at, because we want to keep expanding the economy. We want to keep increasing employment and, of course, incomes for households in the country. But that is only possible because the data is collected and available, and that makes helps us to make the decisions that we need to make. And so right now, one of the things we need to do is, what policies do we need to put in place to bring that potential labor pool, the labor force, into the general labor market. And again, that is only possible because there is information available. You just need to analyze it now.
Now, one important point is that the Ministry of Education is now, we've just about effectively completed the process to change the compulsory age of education from 14 to 16. So 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds should be in school, not part of that labor force that CEO Shal is talking about, right? So just so we're clear that we anticipate some more changes to the data coming up, because once it goes into effect, as we're hoping already, to be honest, that we do have more 14, 15, and 16-year-olds in school than out. But we do expect that we're going to see another uptick in data for secondary school enrollment once this comes into play. So that's one of the policy changes that I think will be impacting data.
How early can we expect this to be enforced? Well,
soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
So, right. I know truancy was a thing back in the days. I know our parents will tell us about truancy officers. And from my brief stint with education at the preschool level, heading that, I know you could still call to speak to the truancy office. I'm just thinking we have so many 14, 15, 16-year-olds who might have thought that, I can just not be in school at that. And I'm saying that because we come out of primary school, maybe, at a certain age, and maybe you're not in you don't go to high school, and it was okay.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I'm leading in this direction, and I know I am, because I'm concerned about our men in the classroom, but I'm also concerned, listening to CEO Shar, about poverty and the reduction in unemployment. And so I'm looking to do, what is the statistics or data telling us about our men in the rural area, in the urban area, our men in school? When we look in our classrooms, we're still seeing more women.
So what we're seeing, actually, the data to now shows, interestingly, almost a 50-50 male-female ratio in preschool, almost 50-50 in primary school, and actually, it's still almost 50-50 in secondary school. The drop happens, the shift happens in tertiary. In tertiary, what we see, I read somewhere the other day, somebody said, women learn while men earn. What we see when we look at the tertiary enrollment data is that we have way more young women enrolled in tertiary than we have than we have young men. Interestingly, when you look at TVET, it's the reverse, because our technical and vocational schools, which are still not as populated as we would want them to be, but the majority of the enrollment in the TVET schools is male, not female. So it's the opposite of the traditional tertiary institutions. When you look again at the data, and the skills gap analysis, that there was one that was done recently, and you look at it, what you realize is that even though you have more young women with tertiary education, you still have more young men who are earning more in the workforce.
Yep.
So it's real, you know. It was President Palacio from UB who told a story one day, and he said he sees so many young men on bikes walking the girls to school, and then they go back and they pick them up, but they don't go into class, you know. So we know that we have more young women enrolled in tertiary. So we have to work to make sure that we keep the boys. We try to lessen the dropout rate. What we know is that the schools that are part of the Education Upliftment Project are all schools who have higher than the national average of dropout rate. And what we've seen just this is a brand new project. It's 1 year old, right? This is year 2. But just in that 1 year, we've seen a reduction in the dropout rate in the 4 schools that started. And so we think that's a win already, you know, because the students are starting and they've stayed more than they were staying in before.
Wonderful.
That's what the data says.
That's what the data
says. Not making it up.
Yep. Wonderful. CEO Shal, the labor pool. You talked about the labor pool a little bit just now. What is the women versus men ratio?
This is very interesting. Thank you, Diana. I hope I'm not muted.
No, we're hearing you.
Oh, good. So you guys were asking earlier, how do we use data? And interestingly, this afternoon I was preparing a presentation that I'm going to give to my senior management team tomorrow. We have a strategic planning session, and I try to give them an overview of the economy and society, looking at trade balance and population growth and GDP growth and that sort of thing. But one of the topics I cover with them is the labor force participation, and so we use. So that's one point I'm trying to make, is that we use the information to plan at the ministry. But secondly, to answer your question, majority of the unemployed in Belize are women and youth, young people. Of those who are highly educated, and by that we mean secondary and tertiary, those who are unemployed, the majority of those who are highly educated and unemployed are women. I find that extremely interesting, because while women are getting educated at a higher rate than men, they are still, the highly educated ones who are unemployed are still mostly women. But of course, we have some ideas as to why that may be. And just another interesting point, just sharing from my presentation, is most of the unemployed persons we have a primary school and a secondary school level education. So, that also brings up several important issues. If they have secondary education, why are they unemployed? And I think that CEO Mejia and I have discussed this before, and I'm sure we will continue this conversation, is that what we find is that there are constraints to women participating in the labor force, and a lot of that has to do with childcare responsibilities or care for the elderly, and for why we have people who have secondary education and are still not working. A major reason for this is the mismatch that occurs between what this system produces and what the market is demanding. And recently, CEO Mejia and I attended a session with the Inter-American Development Bank to look at this particular issue. We need to strengthen the alignment between the supply of skills and the demand for skills in the labor market. And so this is another important issue that we have to work on. And again, the Labor Department cannot do this on its own. The Ministry of Education cannot do this on its own. We have to work together. But these issues are coming about because we have the data, we have information that's telling us we need to strengthen the alignment between the supply and demand.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You know, one other thing that I thought about just now while CEO was talking is that something that also impacts, I think, education and labor force realities is the special needs population, because the care for persons with special needs is absolutely something that has an impact on every family, you know. And again, looking at the realities of data for the Ministry of Education, we've seen that the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years in raising awareness and then on trying to collect data on persons or students, school age students who are special needs populations, that has just opened a whole other world of things for us to look at. As a matter of fact, looking at our lessons learned for last year, one of our lessons learned was basically be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Because we wanted to raise awareness on special needs. We set out deliberately to try to, you know, build a culture where people would be more aware of the importance of inclusion. And in doing different things, in embarking on different initiatives, what we've done is we've also created more work because, you know, that there are now more students who need to be screened, because more teachers and more parents are now thinking, okay, well, is this something that I need to look more closely at? You know, how can I be sure that, you know, I'm supporting my child in the best possible way? And the work of collecting data very often leads to different kinds of work after that, because you get to one point and then you realize, okay, now what? You know, we have to move forward here in different ways after that. So
Yep. So now we're able to tell where we are and make decisions on how we need to move forward. We're almost out of time. We have about 2 minutes. So CEO Shell, I wanted to give you an opportunity for some last remarks.
I thank you. I think we continue to work at the Ministry of Rural Transformation and the entire long name. You know, one interesting thing that we have been doing recently is, because we want to support the rural communities, support agriculture production, working with farmers, we have been on a campaign to drill farmers' wells for farmers to increase their production, which means increase in income for them and their families. We're working closely with the Resilient Rural Beliefs program, which is under the Ministry of Economic Development, collaborating with them. We have also actually been supporting schools to establish irrigation systems to support agricultural programs. You know, we need to ensure that there's food security. That is extremely important. We need to ensure that there is productivity and production of agricultural products. And because rural areas are so dependent on agriculture, this is an extremely important intervention. And, you know, talking about coordination earlier, one of the initiatives that we have embarked on, it's not, you know, we're just getting started, is in order for us to address the issue of poverty in rural areas, we need a roadmap. This is not something that we don't currently have. And so we have started to discuss the development of a national rural development strategy that will outline the roadmap where interventions needs to happen. And this can guide other ministries such as health, education, infrastructure, agriculture, to invest, to guide the investments in rural areas. But of course, I have discussed this with our international partners, and they're very keen on it because it would also help them to see what our priorities are, where to invest, where the government needs support, and in that we have a coordinated set of interventions that is very targeted and can help us to reduce the poverty in rural areas. And so that, I think, is what is key and critical. And so hopefully we can advance this a bit more and have it ready, and of course use it as a tool to coordinate the interventions, targeted interventions, and reduce poverty as we see it in rural areas currently. But I think so far we have been making a dent in it. I think the improvements you have seen in health, in education, a lot of the infrastructure works being done by the Ministry of Infrastructure in rural areas, in fixing bridges and drains and culverts and roads and farmers' roads and village streets. Those things are encouraging economic growth, stimulating the local economies of our rural communities, and increases in the minimum wage gives people hope, gives them a chance to get out of poverty and build a better life for themselves. And that's what we are about, and that's what we have been pushing and will continue to push here at the ministry.
Thank you, CEO Shal. CEO Mejia, we're out of time. Was there any one last thing you wanted to say, what you can say in 30 seconds?
There's no secret. The mission of our ministry is to make education work for Belize. That's how we'll get out of poverty.
Absolutely. It has been a pleasure, CEO Mejia, CEO Shal. Thank you for joining us tonight. Gabrielle, yes, there you are. You want to give us your parting shots for tonight?
I just want to say thank you to the CEOs. This brings us to a close of our strategic objective number 1, poverty reduction. And in the next couple of episodes, we're going to be exploring the other strategic objectives. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you to our viewing audience for joining us tonight. This was a really enjoyable session. I know we've just touched, if you were to get into your initiatives and the projects and more of your policies that are being developed, it would be so much more to share. So hopefully we get another chance. This is part 1 of this particular initiative. So we'll have, if we don't see you back for this season, hopefully we see you in season 2. Sure. Thank you so much to our viewing audience, to our 2 CEOs, to co-host Gabrielle Hulse, who is virtual and maybe will be in studio next week. We keep our fingers crossed that she will be able to join us. It's always a pleasure to be here with you on Wednesday nights. The Galen Hour is a production of Galen University. It focuses on sharing information, educating our populace, and we're really pleased that we're able to do this, and this particular season to be doing this in collaboration with the Ministry of Economic Development. Thank you for joining us. See you same place, same time next week. Good night.